Jason, welcome to Inside the Pulse.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you, man. Your journey's super fascinating. You started in pre-engineering and then it evolved into transportation design and then finding your home and studio furniture.
Yes, sir.
That's something that I think often people don't think about, is that art is not just canvas. Art is sometimes interactive. Art is sometimes functional.
Yeah.
What drew you to the intersection of where materials, purpose, and storytelling combine, and what made you realize this is where I belong?
I think really it's like something I've always been doing ever since I was a kid. Like I was just always getting into stuff, always making stuff, forts in the woods, behind my grandma's house. I was a huge Legos kid and I was just always making things. And we would do home renovations at the house. My uncle would always come over. He did like interior design and home renovations and stuff. And I remember like always looking up to him and thinking like, man, he can turn any space into anything, And I was always like reorganizing my room. I was always making it something cool. It was really, I think I was always drawn to it. It just took me a long time to give myself permission to do it.
And a title too. I kind of feel like, because I grew up with my younger brother who is now an engineer, same way, obsessed with like anytime we got like furniture, he's like, I want to build it, And I think that you have to have kind of that mental desire to create something from nothing. Because I think for a lot of people, including myself, I'm not the type of person that likes to build shit. I like to have the final product done, and then just let somebody else take care of it. But what made you feel like this was my art medium that was going to help me tell my story?
Yeah, I think mostly I work in wood, but I kind of have been adventuring into like multimedia. So like wood.
What do you mean by that, multimedia?
Wood, metal, glass, some ceramics. I love the combination of all these elements together. I think sometimes like woodworkers can become purists and they get into wood and then every piece they make is just wood. And it's just maybe one species of wood, or they'll mix a couple of species of wood. I mean, our world doesn't look like that. It's made of brick and stone and windows and
when you look at a house, I mean, there's so many different materials that are involved in that piece.
Yeah, and I think one of my biggest inspirations is architecture. So I think I strive to like create pieces of furniture that kind of mimic architecture. And architecture kind of does all those things. I think ultimately I would have gone into architecture, but in high school I took all these CAD classes and my older brother went into the architecture wing of it and we beefed real hard when we were kids.
That's an interesting point. Like, do you feel like furniture design has the same, I guess, respect or sublime that architecture design or landscape design has?
Yeah, I mean, like, historically, all the great architects did furniture. Frank Lloyd Wright, Frank Gehry, so many like...
They started doing furniture.
Not started doing furniture, but along with the buildings they were doing, they were also doing the furniture. I think as like the world got more modernized, people specialized more and more and more, and that stopped being as much of a thing. But I mean, there's still plenty of architects that design furniture. I mean, I know plenty of architects that design furniture.
It's so fascinating because a lot of people that know me personally know this about me. I fall asleep to real estate videos of like architectural like masterpieces in like Beverly Hills and all over the world. And it's like you hear these designers talk so like passionately about their art.
Yeah.
In a way, when they're doing the tour, they're like, we designed this table, we designed this pillar, they design everything in the house. And that's something that I think often gets overlooked by a lot of people because they think, most houses today in suburbs are very template cookie cutter houses.
Yeah.
But when you go to certain parts of the world and you see these like incredible pieces of work that are so meticulously designed, for me, someone like me, I can't even wrap my head around like, where do you even start something like that? Is it just like concept? Is it like you're picking up pieces from life and you're like, I like that. I can use something like that in this design later on? Or
it's a gift, I think. Everyone has like that thing that they're good at, and like I said, it kind of starts early on. I think most people end up in careers that was something they kind of messed with as a kid, and it just kept rolling. If they're lucky, you know, if they take that instinct forward.
So the mission of your business is called
Argonaut Studios.
What does that mean?
I don't know how much you know about Greek mythology, but there is a story in Greek mythology with the Greek hero Jason. It was almost the original Avengers. So Jason had a ship called the Argo. He sailed around the Mediterranean, you know, going on adventures, and he had this crew of people called the Argonauts. The Argonauts, like Hercules was an Argonaut. I think Achilles was an Argonaut.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So they were like getting into it. So they were like, you know, the OG.
They were like the leaders, the heroes.
Yeah, the OG Avengers. Yeah. And so I think a lot of times
and it was led by someone named Jason?
Jason.
So that's
Jason.
I'm assuming that's where we pulled it from.
I am Jason. And I think a lot of times artists will name their studio after themselves. And I think I wanted to be a little more subtle.
I think you're the only one that's done
it. So I named the Argonaut Studio because I'm Jason, you know, the captain of my studio, and everyone who works with me is an Argonaut.
So the mission that bridging the gap between art, craft, and design to breathe life into objects. Why does that blend matter to you?
Yeah, I think like, especially now, sometimes art has like this own thing to it. Art is like this fine thing in galleries. And then craft sometimes is like the guy making, you know, like wooden bowls in his garage. And I think these worlds like sometimes get pushed into these corners. And design is also like, you know, you're a technical guy at a computer, almost like an engineer. And
you're thinking about every single element.
And I think all of these things need to come together for you to actually be a good artist and designer.
Yeah.
You know, if you're an artist, but you don't have like good craftsmanship, maybe like your pieces won't look as polished, or they won't like come off as accurately as you wish.
I also feel like you have to be able to see the final product and the bigger picture before anything is even started.
100%.
That's often the biggest challenge with like creative people is like effectively communicating the vision. Because if you can't get, like, say, for example, if you're starting a new business and you're trying to get investors, if you can't get people to see the vision, good luck trying to get funding for that project, you know? So I think that when you're starting a piece or you're working on any type of new creative, you're really starting from a vision.
Yeah.
And then over time, people are able to kind of start to see that vision come to life physically, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I think you can't get too lost in it. I think as long as you focus on like what you want to create and you follow those things, you'll be successful for sure.
How much of Detroit is embedded in your work?
A lot.
Like, explain that a little bit, because Detroit is a very industrial rooted city.
Yeah.
You know, you walk around, I mean, you got like you have like so many different people that are known for architectural design and just so many different types of design in the city of Detroit. So there's so much rich history here.
Yeah.
Like, how do you see that, or our city reflected in your work? Or how do you try to reflect the city's energy into your work?
Yeah, I think like Detroit's so interesting as like a modern experiment. I mean, I went to Greece. I was fortunate enough to go to Greece last spring, and then I went to Lebanon last summer. Both places is super rich in history, like deep ancient histories. And you're walking around in those countries and you might see like a Roman or Greek ruin, like over there on the hill. And Greece is a little more like closed off. It might be a little more touristy. In Lebanon and a lot of places, you can just go walk on those ruins. Detroit has kind of the same thing going on. Like, because of this deep, beautiful architectural history, design history, and then it all kind of crumbling all at once, we have like beautiful modern marvels, but they're ruins. So like you're walking around Detroit, and sometimes like people might see it as like, oh man, this is like kind of a trashy area, or this is like a little ghetto. And I'm driving around like, man, like look at all these ruins, right? And it's kind of so cool that there's so much material. Like I like to use a lot of found object in my work. And you can
explain that, because I think some people may not understand what you mean found object.
Yeah. So like a lot of times I'll go looking for materials, or even while I'm driving around, like there'll be like a broken down chair on
Where
the
are
side
you
of the
looking?
road. I mean, everywhere. Just driving around in Detroit, there's a lot of spots.
Like abandoned buildings.
Abandoned buildings for sure. I know some places though it's kind of felony, so I tried to not as much.
What's
anymore,
the coolest shit you ever found?
The coolest thing I ever found, I think there's a old school by my house that I went to a couple years ago, and the light diffusion things on the ceiling had fallen and they're like kind of rusted over, but they have like this really cool fan type thing, and it looks like the back of like an old 70s fastback Mustang. Like it's, yeah, just like these objects that were kind of like so over designed and so beautiful, but then they kind of like were decayed.
Yeah, deteriorated over time.
And it
tells a story.
Yeah, for
sure. You know,
and
I think that a lot of times people like, you ever see those shows where people go and they unlock a storage unit, or they go to an estate sale, or they go like they're hunting for like history.
They're hunting for character. Yeah.
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 And that's something, because it tells a story. I mean, in Detroit, like recently, the Michigan Central was renovated, and they have on display at the very front like one of the original, or I don't know if it's one of the original, but when it was before renovation, like just to kind of remind people of what it used to be.
Yeah.
Because it really does. History tells a story.
Yeah, I think like some of the reason I think that attracts people so much, that character, that wear, is it feels more alive. I don't know if you ever heard of the Japanese concept Wabi Sabi. Wabi Sabi, I mean, there's a lot of definitions to it, but the way I understand it is like things are made more beautiful as the world and life has acted upon them, right? So like the Japanese have a long tradition of doing like rock gardens, right? And they rake the sand. And the most beautiful rocks in the rock garden are the ones that were like found in the woods, or like found in the middle of a river. And like the water has like eroded parts of the rock away. And that rock is only that beautiful because of all the things that's happened to it. And so Detroit kind of has like a accelerated version of that, because it was allowed to let nature like run its course on it in so many areas. And so there's just so much like raw character here.
And I think that's in part too why for some people, like furniture design is so deeply emotional and personal for them because of that fact.
Yeah.
Like if they see a piece that uses a specific type of wood or furniture that was made from like the early 1900s that reminds them of somebody personal to them. Like, I mean, I feel like I saw a clip recently where it's like, we live out the experiences of our ancestors, like generation after generation after generation, you know? And I think that tangible things have an impact on us because of the things that we can't fully comprehend.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah. A couple years back, I was, surfing Facebook Marketplace, and I saw this rocking chair on there. And I mean, as like a history buff, I know like famous pieces of furniture, and this rocking chair had Thonet on the back of it.
What's that?
Thonet was this famous Austrian furniture designer. He invented flat packing. He was the first guy to like disassemble furniture, put it in crates and ship it. Before it was like
IKEA.
You go to the store and the furniture is already assembled. So he was the guy who, in factory would send it out in parts, and then they would assemble it in the showroom.
So what's his name?
Thonet. So I show up at this old lady's house to pick up this rocking chair, knock on her door. She has it, right at the front door, answers the door. And I could tell she was kind of like almost apprehensive to give it away.
Wow.
And I said to her, like, thank you so much. I know a lot about this chair and its history. I'm really excited to have it. And she like looked at me with a smile. She was like, I'm really glad about that. She said, this rocking chair I bought in the 60s from the store. She said, I rocked all my grandbabies and all my children in it. And I'm like, okay, this is a special chair. And so that almost now this chair, like I know all this design history about it and how cool it is. And then what she did to the chair and her life and all this energy that she put onto it is now even more important than that. And that energy is like, I mean, it's tangible. Your house is like the thing that you go into, you sit down in there, and depending on the wall color, depending on the lighting, depending on the pieces of furniture in there, like what those pieces of furniture mean to you affects your mood and affects your health. Your space is like, you know, it changes.
It's a reflection of you.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that sometimes often like people don't recognize that. Like when somebody is not in a good mental state, it reflects physically.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that your environment is such a huge reflection of your self-expression. You know, for a lot of people, it's emotional or it reminds them of their family. But I think for also, some people just, they want that uniqueness of this piece was, you know, because like when you think about fashion, like fashion ties in so many original pieces come out of archive all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's because of that rich history of who created it, when it was created, what was the time that it was created. So I'm curious, how much did you pay for that rocking chair?
$20.
And how much
is it worth?
Yeah.
I mean, I felt bad about it, but probably like anywhere from $700 to $1,500.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you know? Like, so did you study? I'm assuming you did. You studied the history of furniture design when you were in school?
Yeah. At CCS. One of the classes I took was history of interior design, and we cover a lot of that. And actually, the book I have at home, the actual textbook has a page with that exact rocking chair on it.
Meant to be, man.
Yeah.
If you had that book, it was meant to be.
Yeah.
How do you think that? Because when I went to your studio in Detroit, there were so many different, there was even like a fishnet with foam hanging from the ceiling. And I remember you saying that you're still thinking about how to, well, you had started a piece and finished a piece with it, but then you were telling me you were thinking about how to utilize all those different pieces for future work.
Yeah.
How do you like framework like what you want to try, what you want to work with? Are there certain materials that you just don't like, or you know, is it are there some materials that are more your signature, or are you trying to make it more your signature style?
I think it's about what you are attracted to, right? Like for me, I don't really like to stain wood. Like when it comes to wood, I want it to be like the actual color that the species of wood
organic.
Is. Yeah, if I want to make a piece with a darker look to it, I'm going to use a darker species of wood. And like same thing with, I mean, concrete. Like I love the texture of concrete. The reason I had all that styrofoam and that fishing net was to cast concrete into it, right? And like the texture that the styrofoam like projects onto the pieces of concrete, like that adds a whole nother tactile thing to it. So now I got like the wood with the concrete, and now I'm throwing some steel in there because it's like this hard and super structural, and it has a completely different vibe to it. And like I think the marriage of all these materials together is something that I'm just really attracted to. And Detroit is kind of that. It's like a lot of concrete, a lot of metal, but then like we're in Michigan, like there's lots of wood around. Yeah.
I feel like too, man, that's such a symbol for life in general, man. Like I think that people get so comfortable in their structure and what's supposed to be, and it's like really when you pull in mixed media from different elements that people don't expect and you make it feel like it was meant to be, it really opens up the mind for people on like what is possible.
I mean, what's the point of doing all this? Like why pursue art and design? Why make furniture? For me, ultimately, it's like I want people to see that. Like they go to IKEA, they go to these furniture stores. They even go on Facebook Marketplace and look for used furniture. And there's like a whole possibility of what is possible. And then there's what people like think they're allowed to do or think like.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think we have like parameters that we kind of grew up with, like a chair looks like this, you know, a coffee table looks like this, a house looks like this. And then you see like this crazy house on YouTube or this crazy chair on YouTube and you're like, whoa, that's so cool. Like, how do you get that? But people don't actually always ask like, how do I get that? They're just like, oh, that's cool.
But also too, they ask like, how do I live it? Like, do you think that has to do with the fact that most people like to do what is expected because they feel like part of something?
Yeah.
Or because like anytime you stand out from a group, you're consciously aware that more attention is on you because of what you're doing differently. Yeah. But that also opens up the door to, you know, opinions and judgment and criticism and all kind like
that's scary.
All kinds. Yeah, it's scary because I remember another part of our conversation at your studio. You were talking about like how your culture is so connected to your work, and that really made me like open up my mind to, you know, because I notice it. I noticed that like when I have a certain, you know, person on, more from that community support that person. Yeah. But if I have another person that doesn't, it just, I notice the differences. Yeah. And I've noticed this throughout my entire career. Even when, you know, sometimes like I used to work with the Detroit Tigers organization, and even in the locker room, like everybody it was like they were in their groups. The Hispanics with the Hispanics, you know, the whites with the whites. And I'm like, it's an interesting thing to notice. Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, why is it that way? You know? And then why is it that cultural, like, it's supposed to be celebrated. You're supposed to, like, I think that anybody that creates is going to be pulling in elements from their culture because it's to the core who they are. Yeah. But I think that it's such a fascinating thing that almost people sometimes don't feel like they have either the right or maybe some reservation on supporting because they don't know if it's okay to, or they don't know how other people are going to perceive their support of that person because of their background or their culture or whatever.
Yeah, my dad's Lebanese, my mom's Jordanian. They both immigrated here with their families like early 80s, maybe late 70s. And I've been around the immigrant community like my whole life. My church was all immigrants from the Middle East, mostly Syria. And I've noticed this thing with immigrants that, you know, growing up, I was around a lot of people who immigrated here when they were older, and they always end up like doing gas station jobs or like kind of like more blue collar work. My parents both, you know, blue collar. My mom works on the assembly line at Chrysler. My dad worked in a factory until he retired a couple years ago. Like a lot of these people who come here when they're older, in the country they come from, they were like doctors or journalists or like lawyers. And then they come here to find a better life, and they don't speak English, or they're not really great at English. And then it's harder for them to get that doctor job. It's harder for them to get that lawyer job.
Or often sometimes it's hard to just even go out into the world because you're afraid that somebody's going to, you know, like if somebody's undocumented, they're afraid that like what's going to happen. Like right now, everything that's going on in the Hispanic community, like it's, people are afraid to even go to dinner because there's a chance that you could be separated from your family. And just 100%. That feeling is just like, how do you live like that? You know?
Yeah, it goes from like a point of like, we're okay to now all of a sudden we're trying to seek a better life, but it's not 100% guaranteed. It's not maybe 100% safe always. So it's like, so now we're in a survival mode. And because we're in survival mode, we're gonna like just do the things that are gonna get us like money right now. We're not gonna like take a leap. We're not gonna take too much chances because we're like in a safety mode. Art and design is not something that is
you
like
can be safe,
right? So like because I'm you know, first generation born here, like my parents were like, there's like 3 options that you could do. And this is like, I hear a lot of immigrants say, it's like, you can be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be an engineer. Art and design is not something that was like even talked about, or even like they didn't even know it was an option.
Yeah.
Right?
Why do you think that those 3 pillars are like the safety net?
Medical field, like it makes money, right?
But is it like, does it feel safer for them? Like, do they feel like even if something were to happen, they'll still have their, education and they can go anywhere? And
yeah, you got a degree in medicine, like you can be a doctor anywhere. They need doctors everywhere. Yeah, it's like it's a position that makes good money, but it's also a position where there's a lot of opportunity in that field. Whereas art and design sometimes is like a position that doesn't always make money, and there's not always seems to be like, when the flood comes, they don't need artists and designers. They need like someone to build a new dam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mind me asking about like when you realized that you wanted to pursue art, what was the initial reaction of your family?
Yeah, I think they just didn't know what it was. They're like, what? I think I was kind of sneaky about it too. Originally I was in pre-engineering, and then like I realized I was working at a little firm in Mount Clemens, like as a CAD kid, and like filing blueprints and stuff, and it was real boring. I loved like making things and thinking about like how to solve problems, but it wasn't like cool objects, they were parts. And then that's what attracted me to look for like, how do I do this but more creative? And I found CCS that has a car design program. Pitched it to my parents. They were like, okay, maybe. Sat down with some family, kind of like pitched it to them. All my uncles work for the big 3. They were like, I guess this seems like, if it's car related,
seems legit enough.
If it's car related, you can get a job. They didn't know how competitive it was. That's as far as they knew. So they let me go. It also was pretty expensive. And, we were on a blue collar, budget. So I took like as many classes at Macomb Community as possible to transfer, and was like part-time my whole time at CCS. But, once I got into car design, they were like, okay, he's there. We can't stop him now. And then, I was in the program for a year, was miserable. And then
you just didn't like.
Yeah, I think car design is a lot of drawing. At least in the early stages, the first year, like you're just sketching all day long, and I'm not a great sketcher. I've always been the one like who had to like get my hands dirty,
like hands on.
The Legos kid, right? And so for the furniture department was in the crafts department.
Did you just stumble on it? Like, were you walking down the hall and you saw all these pieces and you're like,
I remember like there was a kid in one of the rendering classes that I took, and he was like, man, this is like real hard. Like, I'm thinking about switching to the furniture program. And I was like, furniture program? And I took woodshop in high school. So I was like, what's that? We have a furniture program at the school? So then I looked into it, and then, went and talked.
The rest is history.
Yeah, I went and talked with the head, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. So then I sat down with a professor at CCS who I was like real trusted. And I was like, this is what I'm thinking. And he was like, okay, well, next semester, take half car design, half furniture classes, and see which one you like at the end of the semester. Hated all of the car classes, was like obsessed with all the furniture classes. So,
So I'm curious what you would say. So if you could talk to, you said your background is
ethnically, Lebanese and Jordanian.
Lebanese and Jordanian. Yeah. If you could sit in front of an audience of parents from that background and like imagine this, like their kids are getting ready to go into a creative career. Yeah. What would you say to all of them?
If they if they feel like it's
because like I get it too. Like I come from a Hispanic background, and there's like, same thing. Go work, go do construction, go build houses, Yeah. When I started working in marketing, and then too, bro, like entrepreneurship in 2016 was not like as trendy as it is now after, 2020. So like everybody thought I was wasting my time. Everybody thought I was crazy, and I think for me, if I was sitting in front of a, group of people that their kids are getting ready or their offspring are getting ready to pursue a career that they may not fully understand, I would just say to them, like, just understand this, that in order for your kids to be truly happy in their life, they got to pursue their calling.
Yeah. You ever heard of a guy named Alan Watts?
Mm-mm.
So Alan Watts was like this kind of like philosopher, mystic, Christian, Buddhist, like professor in England in like the 70s, 80s. Yeah. And he has like a series of lectures on the internet. And in high school, I found them like end of high school when I was trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do with my life. And he had...
Where did you go to high school, by the way?
Chippewa Valley High School in Clinton Township. So, yeah, out in the burbs.
Shout out Chippewa.
Yeah, out in the burbs. Terrible times. Yeah, and he has this lecture that he talks about. He always asks his students, like, what do you want to do? And they all say, like, you know, doctor, lawyer, that kind of thing. And then he says, you know, okay, cool. What do you want to do if money was not an issue? And then like half of their answers change. You know, they want to be writers and poets, and one person wants to work with horses or wants to ride horses. And he says, okay, like, would you open a riding school? Like, and his thing was like, no matter what it is, if you love it, you're gonna like spend all your time doing it.
And you'll figure out how to make it work for you. You know, like I think that's a huge part, because I would assume for you, after opening your, or realizing that you wanted to pursue this as a full-time career, most artists that I speak with that have attended CCS have shared that they're not as thorough on the business side. Like how to get clients, how to market, how, you know, to build relationships and your network and build a brand and all these things that you have to do in order to have any type of successful business. I think, and the thing is, you know what you want to do, like, you know, the end goal. Yeah. But in order to achieve it, you need people buying your products, your furniture.
You need some kind of money coming.
Yeah. You need a clientele, you know?
Yeah.
Over the years, what have you discovered to be like the most effective strategies or the most effective techniques or resources? Like, how have you started your network development and your roster of collectors?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still figuring it out. In no way do I feel like I've achieved like the level of success I want to be at.
When did you start your business?
2022.
2022. Yeah. So it's 2025 for reference now. So it's about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years. August 2022.
Can I just say real quick before you answer? It took me a decade to feel comfortable with answering this question. Yeah. And that's something that I think not enough people say. Everybody wants to look like they got it all figured out. Yeah. I still don't got it figured out. Yeah. I'm still figuring it out every day.
Yeah, I think like dream scenario, I'm a gallery artist for sure, like making pieces of furniture, putting them out there in the world, somebody's purchasing.
Why gallery specifically?
It doesn't need to be gallery. I think it's just like that's the label of like the type of artist is like you're just creating work, putting it out in the world.
Got it.
And someone's purchasing
You're seen here when you're in galleries.
Yeah, for sure.
Got it.
I think the things like that have made me money currently, when I left CCS, I went to work for a furniture maker in the city, Gannis Manufacturing, and they've done a ton of spaces in the city. And they're mostly building the stuff.
Are they doing unique pieces or like,
like some super unique pieces, and then some like just
mass
huge,
production?
Yeah, huge build outs. And I did that because I was like, okay, I got the design and art side at CCS, but I need to learn the technical side. Like, how do I actually build things? So then I went and worked there for about 3 years, 2 years as a craftsman, and then 6 months as a CAD engineer. So then I got the technical side, and then I was like, all right, I guess I'm ready to try this on my own. So the majority of the money that's come in is like people hiring me to build out spaces. So Wine Bar just opened right in front of my studio, Vesper Wine and Books. I did the bar in there. I built a bunch of
super cool, by the way.
Yeah, and so like even that work was designed by N Studio, which is an architecture firm. And then I got the opportunity to build their designs. I don't know if you've been to La Ventana, the cafe. Yeah. I did the facade on the bar and the pastry case and the island behind the bar, and then I did the finishing for all
design and build.
So in that case, I was just building it. An architect
Do
designed
you
all that.
prefer to design and build, or are you like completely comfortable with just one or the other?
I'm comfortable with building for sure. I mean, it takes a lot of like the thinking out of it. I love to design. Yeah. And I mean, like as an artist,
because it's
you
like
wanna
it's
be
one
in
of
full
those things where
control.
it's like your design is it's your baby, you know, like you're able to take, I don't want to say more pride in it, but it's just like anytime I get involved in a project where there's already kind of a pre-developed idea, it really makes it hard for me to execute what I know I can for a brand because of their set expectation on what they already think should be. And it just makes the whole process so much more complicated.
Yeah. I love constraints, but too many constraints, and now it's like there's no freedom.
So you got La Ventana, the wine bar. Where else can people see your work?
If anyone's been to the New Lab space, I'm also a fellow there. So right when New Lab opened, they decided they needed people to, you know, help build their prototypes for the companies, and kind of like contractors to come in, but they needed vetted contractors. So they created this fellowship program. So I'm essentially just like a woodworker within New Lab, and any of the companies in the New Lab system can hire me to build their prototypes.
Such a cool space, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's this organization called Femology that's headquartered inside of New Lab. And it's a cool organization because they support women entrepreneurs, you know, because I think that's something too that when you're starting out, it's like your support system is so important. Because it's like, if you don't know something, I mean, now today it's different because I feel like now you have other options. You have AI, you know, ChatGPT, you can go in there and ask a ton of questions like it's your own personal assistant. But I think most people are still kind of comprehending how to even formulate those questions or those prompts. But when you have an organization like that that helps kind of framework and help lead you into the right direction, because the thing is, it's like, most people don't start because of that fear. You know what I'm saying? Like when you were starting, you started in 2022. I'm sure that, you know, there were a lot of doubts and things that were going through your mind. Like, should I just stay full time, you know, or should I do this? Like, what was the thing that kind of like pushed you forward in that?
There wasn't enough time like working and trying to do this. Like this kind of is a full-time job. I mean, it is a full-time job. Doesn't always pay, but it is a full-time job. When I was working at Gas.
Hold on. Can I say something? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to say something on that because I think it's so important for people to hear this, is that building brand takes time. Like building legacy takes time. And I think that a lot, you hear people say, I want to build generational wealth. I want to do this. I want to, you know, leave a legacy. But it's yet people don't want to put in the time to do it. And I understand the pressures from family and, you know, your surroundings. But it's so important to mute that as much as you can. And I know that it's hard sometimes, but I think it's so important to mute it, because when you have that, like as a creative, like how we were talking about, you have a vision. And you're going to build it out. When you have that vision, like if you let people stop you from doing what you know is set in your mind as like, I have to bring this to life, it's so detrimental. You know?
I think, I mean, like an hour before I came here, my mom called me like, you know, how's everything going? Any jobs come in? Like, you know, maybe you should think about getting like a more like stable job. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I get that, but it's like, I got the dream, and if you had like showed me 5 years ago how far I've come, I'll be like, no way. Like so much has happened, and I'm just like, okay, if this is the trajectory, bro, I just gotta like keep my head down and keep going. And eventually, you know,
and it's only been 2 years. I got a text from somebody earlier today that was one of my very first clients when I started my business in 2016, successful entrepreneur in Texas. And he texted me, he was like, I woke up around like 8 o'clock, and it was the first text I saw. And he was like, hey brother, like I just wanted to let you know I spent the last 25 minutes scrolling through your Instagram. I'm really proud of you. Like you just completely like you're growing into yourself. And I was like, man, it's sometimes hearing that is a reminder of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's like, it really, like, growth you can't see in real time.
Yeah.
People can see it, but you don't see it. You don't recognize it. Growth sometimes feels like the hardest feeling in the world, because it's like, I just want this, like, I already know where I'm supposed to be. I already know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't want to be like, but then you're battling with it, because you're like, I want to be present. I want to be here. I want to enjoy this moment. But I also understand that it's going to take so much time for me to get to where I know I'm going.
Yeah.
And then the outside noise of like, you got to do this. You're battling with that too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and like my knees were hurting in middle school. And I'm like, yo, what's happening? And my parents are like, you're getting taller, dude. Like, it's the growing pains.
Yeah, like, man. There's so many like physical, like tangible examples, I think, created for us to understand that, like, yeah, you know, I use this scenario all the time. Like, when you throw a pack of seeds into a dirt, you're not going to get a garden tomorrow, you know? But like, people want to eat. People want to have a fruitful garden, but it's like, you're not going to, it's not designed to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, it's designed to take time. And I think you're only going to get to that point of, you know, when people start to like write books about you and people start to like want to have your face on a, you know, a gallery outside, you know, exhibition, like
one of these days.
But I'm saying, man, like that there was a moment in time when those people were in these seats and saying, one of these days. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it really is a time thing. And I think the biggest thing I would want anybody to hear from like people that are in that time is that like it's coming. Yeah. You know, like it's coming. Yeah. It's right around the corner, and it's all by design.
Yeah. And but also it's like, what is the thing that's coming and what is the point? And I think I always got to remind myself of that, is like, I am living my dream. Even though it's like not financially panning out, I'm still like every day making cool stuff. And that's all I've ever wanted to do anyway. You know, even if like I go the rest of my life with no fame, without my face on the side of like some building, like, you know, big opening. It's like, I made all this cool shit and I had so much fun.
I just saw, and I'm going to send this clip to you on Instagram. It was a clip that I saw of one of the co-founders of YouTube. He was sitting in this little like office space, and there was like the early days of YouTube. And they're like, man, we only got like 40 or 50 videos. I mean, like, you know, you can feel the defeat in their voice. Yeah. And then fast forward to 2025, it's one of the biggest platforms in the world. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like it's I want people to like allow themselves the opportunity to reflect. I feel like when we go to school and we study history, it's a reason that we study history. Yeah. It's not for fun. Yeah. It wasn't my favorite subject.
It's proof.
Yeah, it's proof. Yeah. That cycles repeat, that time leads to growth and change, you know? And you have to go through those friction. You have to, like, evolution requires friction, you know? So it's like, if you don't, yesterday I was on a rant, like posting stuff and just writing my thoughts on Instagram. And I was like, there was this clip that I saw from an artist named Dochi. And she had said something along the lines where it was like, I have to write the bad songs in order to get to the good. I have to perform bad in order to get to the good. And I was like, man, that is pure right there. Yeah. Because the amount of times that I reflected on my work, and at the moment I put it out, I was like, man, that's the dopest, firest piece of, you know? And then you look back at it and you're like, what the fuck was I like thinking? I ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it really is, but like, and then I think over time, like I had just mentioned about my friend, like, they start to notice it too. Mm-hmm. And then once the noise starts to like fade a little bit, they start to recognize what you've known all along. Yeah.
I mean, isn't it like the signs are always there? You know, you're saying like history, and like I look at nature as like a huge source of inspiration, and nature has always shown us like, you know, a seed has to completely destroy itself to become a plant.
Yeah.
Right? A butterfly has to go into the cocoon and like
rip out of its skin.
Yeah, like completely transform itself to like retreat, you know, achieve the next level.
Spread its wings and fly.
Yeah.
You know?
We're all just butterflies.
Dude, it's metaphor. Like I feel like if you're the type of person that doubts anything, all you got to do is open your eyes and look around the world.
Yeah.
That's it. Because there's so many examples of like, this wasn't here yesterday. This was, you know what I'm saying? Like even us.
Yeah.
Where were you 100 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? People overthink things because they're trying to make sense of something that we just, like, it just is. Like, you don't have to make sense of it. You just have to enjoy it.
Yeah. It's an ebb and flow. Like the good 100%. Times, the only times are only good because the bad times were there, right?
So you also teach at Lawrence Tech?
I do, yeah. So this past semester, I was invited to co-teach furniture and millwork at Lawrence. So much fun. Yeah.
Dude, that is so awesome, man.
Yeah.
Like to be able to teach on a university level, something that you're like just passionate, like it's your gift. Yeah. That's a huge accomplishment in itself, man.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I've always worked with kids. Like since I was 19, I worked at like summer camps and, you know, all over the country, and really just always loved working with youth. And like, you know, I haven't gone to grad school, and that was always an idea. Like, you know, should I go to grad school? And I think one of the main reasons for grad school is like, if you want to teach, you kind of have to have that degree. And then,
do you want to teach?
I don't know yet. Yeah. So this opportunity popped up, and I was like, okay, this is like, I get to see what it's like. I think like I'm not a good person when it comes to like paperwork and sending emails, and I think like,
but you don't have to be though.
Yeah.
Because like you can have what are they called?
A TA.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like a huge part of being a professor. And I think like it was cool because this class is a lecture period and lab period. And so my co-professor did mostly the lecture, and then she would come and kind of be my wingman for me leading the charge on the lab period. And that was like, I just loved going into the wood shop with like this, you know, 30 students in front of me and just being like, let me show you how to do
What's the age range of those students?
They were mostly juniors and seniors, and their disciplines were mostly interior design and architecture.
What's the common thing that you hear amongst those students? Like when you're like, man, like I remember that, but you understand it differently now.
I mean, like I remember when I was a student, and this is one thing I say to them, like I showed up in the wood shop as like a first year furniture student and could look at a piece of wood and have no idea what it is. And now I can look at any species.
Like the type of wood.
Yeah, and I can look at any coffee table now and be like, that's walnut, that's white oak, that's ash, right? Like it just takes time to learn those things. It turns time to like the techniques and just like the types of joints. And it's like, you just don't know what you don't know.
Why is that important? Like for you, you'd understand like, and also like developers, like using certain types of woods in certain climates and stuff. Like, why is it important, the type of wood? Like if you could give a summation of why it's important.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to get into it, it's like walnut is real beautiful. It machines really well.
What does that mean?
So when you're like cutting into it, it's not such a hard wood that like it just destroys your bit as you're using it, but it's not good outside. Whereas like a wood like an exotic wood, ipe, right? Or they call it ironwood, comes from the Amazon, super hard, but it's also weather resistant and to some extent fire resistant, right? Like, so if I'm building outdoor furniture, so ipe is majority used in like decking, right? I built a chair out of some ipe that was, you know, fall off.
Because I think a lot of times people think about like when material is being used, it's like you have to know what questions to ask. Like I was I was recently shopping around for like new brakes, and I was asking ChatGPT. I was like, what question should I ask, you know, like to get, you know, and there was a response that kind of, I was like, man, I never even thought to ask that. There was like a OEM, like original manufacturer, like, and then it explained like why you want this. So it's like equivalent, like when you're getting a house, like say for example, you're getting a house built. It's like knowing what type of wood, because it's like you're factoring in mold, you're factoring in like weather resistant. Like if you don't know what is best for your unique situation or needs, like how are you going to be able to get the outcome that's best? You
and
know?
if like a builder tells you, we're going to build this house and it's going to be $3 million, and you're like, why is it $3 million? And they're using walnut as the studs, which would never happen, but it's like, that's a very expensive wood.
You understand?
Why aren't we just using pine, right? You gotta like know the species of wood. And again, like there's all materials. I mean, there's like so many different kinds of metals. There's so many different kinds of steels. They all have their like own application. They all finish differently. Like pine, you know, doesn't always paint well, whereas like ash might paint better. And why? Because like pine might have a little more resin, you know, it has like the sap type situation, whereas like a harder wood doesn't have that situation.
Do you ever see other artists using types of, because would you call yourself a wood expert?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you ever see other artists or creators and you're like, why did they use that?
Yeah, for sure. But I'm not trying to be that guy that's like highbrow. Like
no, but the reason I asked is because I think it's because people don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I think like hypothetical, like a perfect scenario would be like if an artist builds a canvas out of wood, what's the best type of wood to use?
In that case, probably pine.
Pine
just
wood?
because it's cheap and it's like it does the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if they wanted to go like hardwood for some reason, I would probably use like ash or oak.
Ash wood.
Yeah.
Mm. So what's like a dream? Like, so let me ask you this question. So are there any type, because in the wood world, I would assume like in any other industry, there's like elite and then there's like easily accessible.
Yeah.
What is that elite material for you that you're like, I want to get my hands on that?
I'm not sure. Yeah. Like as far as maybe like Mexican rosewood. Yeah. But it's like super expensive. And then also it's like, I don't know if it's sustainable. And
does it just look super
it's
cool?
So pretty.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so pretty. But I mean, like my favorite wood to work with is walnut. I just think it's so pretty, and it's a domestic wood. It's easy to get. It's like the only reason it's kind of expensive is just because it's like in high demand. But otherwise, yeah, I think like sometimes we want to answer like, oh, this crazy like unaffordable thing, but then those unaffordable things are oftentimes like you got to cut down the Amazon to get it, and then it's like I don't want to use that, you know.
Yeah, and I think also too, it's not always what it's hyped up to be.
Yeah.
I think like sometimes if you can find wood in your backyard that's like, you can turn into some crazy, incredible piece. Like, I don't think you always need, I think that is so relevant to also like the media world, because it's like a lot of times people will say, I'm not going to start filming until I have a high quality camera.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't really need that. Like I've worked with so many different types of equipment that I'm like, sometimes people just do it for show. Yeah. Like there's certain cameras like the Red camera that a lot of times are $50,000 cameras, and people feel like if they have that, they're going to be seen as like, but it's not, because there's people that are killing it with a phone camera.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's not really about like what you use, is how you use it.
100%.
Yeah. And I like the reason I like using found object too is like I want to elevate materials. And sometimes found object is like, I mean, this was a discarded thing that was like thrown out or like chilling in an abandoned building, like destined, doomed to be, you know, destroyed and as part of a landfill. And it's like, I want to take those materials that otherwise people would see and be like, oh, that's trash, and elevate it to such a high status that now you question everything. Yeah.
It's not the material, it's the creator.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
like you can literally have a $50,000 piece of art standing next to a $500 piece of art.
Yeah.
Same materials.
Yeah.
Same canvas.
Yeah.
Same gallery, but different artists.
Yeah. Art is funny that way.
But that it's so relevant to everything, every industry, because there's certain doctors that are highly sought after. There's certain even painters, like just home painters, you know. I think that it really is important for creators to focus not so much about getting their hands on certain things. And that's why I asked the question, is because it's more so like what is inside of you is what people want to buy. Like the ideas that you have, how you're using certain materials, why you're doing it that way. You know, one of the other things when we were talking at your studio, I was showing you like about the pixels and stuff. And it really made me think, because I'm like, when you're in a space all the time, you know it all the time, right?
Yeah.
And for someone like me, like in my world, I have a million ideas, but I don't have, like the same with you. We don't have the time to execute all those ideas.
Yeah.
They live in the back of our mind, you know? So for me, I recently started doing the series called ChatGPT's Prompts with Ralph.
Yeah.
And it really opened up the opportunity for me to share, like, you know, I just filmed the one recently where it's like for artists specifically, and it was inspired by our conversation with the pixels. Like, and I was like, you know, if you're an artist, this type of artist, and you're trying to do this, like literally laying out the entire context and framework, this is what I would do, this is how I would do it, this is what I would say on camera, this is how I would retard. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, when you do something so often, you just know what works, you know? But it's like, it still requires time, you know? And I think that that's the part that often, you know, we get stuck in our own mind about. It's like, we start to feel defeated because it's like, we feel worked against by time.
Yeah, I wish there was like 8 of me.
I think every creator wishes there was like at least 2.
Yeah.
2 would work.
I mean, like, it's almost like I don't have, like, my thing is furniture. And like, even like within furniture, like, obviously I've learned like a ton about wood, and I'm excited to learn a ton more about like metals and ceramics and like different concretes and like dyeing concretes and stuff like that. And it's like, I have all this time that I'm trying to focus on this one thing. And then on top of it, within like the world that we live in and like the social media economy, it's like, wait, now I have to learn how to like video edit and content create. And it's like,
dude, you know what's so wild that you say that? Because like, I literally last night, I saw another clip from another artist that said something so in parallel to what you just said. And they were like, I just want to make music.
Yeah.
But now I have to do TikTok dances, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. But then they said, but I changed my perspective on it, and I realized that it was an opportunity for me, because no longer is my work only able to reach people through certain media outlets. I now have the opportunity to do it on my own through my platform.
Yeah.
So perspective, I think, is such a huge, but it's so real, man. Because like, I think sometimes like when we're blessed to be in a position that we're in, I think that sometimes it's easy for us to kind of like turn on the negative perspective a little bit and kind of woo ourselves. But it's like, no, man, like you get to go and do what you love every day. You get to like help people. You get to inspire people. You get to create things that didn't exist. You know, it's huge. It's so much deeper than just, and that is the responsibility of a creator.
It's a responsibility. Yeah. It's like people, I mean, when people have seen my content and like my Instagram and like have been to a show and seen my work and like have talked to me about it, and then I see them later and they're like, yo, I saw that thing you did and that was like so cool. And sometimes like, you know, I'll have a piece in like a group show and someone will come up to me and like know my work and I've never met them before. And they're like, yo, I'm so inspired by this. And it's like, oh, okay. So like this thing that I did that was kind of so personal helped someone else that like I didn't even have any contact with.
100%.
And that's like a huge responsibility, but also like it's like a good responsibility. Like I love to help people, you know, I love to volunteer, I love to do that kind of work. So it's like if I can now like take my passion and my love and turn that into the thing that helps people, like that's even better, you know?
It's huge. I think that you start to find yourself evolving in ways that you didn't even realize you were going to throughout life. And I think because I have similar experiences where, you know, somebody will come up to me and say, hey, what's up, Ralph? I'm like, I have to catch myself because I'm like, do I know this person from high school or do I, you know? And then I'm like, hey, what's it like? They're like, I saw one of your episodes with, you know, a friend of mine. Like, I'm like, that's so cool. Like, it's cool to be able to feel like what you're doing is reaching people in a positive way and having some sort of positive impact on their life, or maybe inspiring them to do something that they've always wanted to, you know, like, I never approach it from the lens of, look at me. This is what I'm doing. This doesn't make me like, I'm the things that I do for money, people never see.
Yeah.
Because it's like, that's behind like the curtain. The things that I put out, I'm not getting paid for it right now. Yeah. But it's like, I understand that in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, as this starts to accumulate in perpetuity, like, it's going to pay off because of the reach. Yeah. You know, and the other thing is like, you constantly are testing things, man. Like earlier today, I was testing ad sets with like, you know, certain regions, because like for me, my goal is not to just be Detroit. That's it. My goal is to build a personal brand that's going to reach beyond the country borders. Yeah. So what I did was I built one set, and I asked ChatGPT this. I was like, help me find the cities and states within the United States that would have the highest return on my ad investment, but then also show me 10 cities outside of the United States that would show me the highest returns for my ad investment, meaning there's not a lot of competition in those areas for ads. Yeah. Because ultimately my end goal is to share what I know, my expertise with people around the world, you know? So if you know that New York City is going to be a highly saturated ad environment, maybe don't start there. Yeah. Maybe start in like a place like Atlanta, Georgia, where it's not as highly saturated, you know? So I think that it's strategy with like how you approach things, because over time, as you practice and do these things like repetition, things start to come to like light for you. And you're like, oh, so you're telling me if I do this way or that way, then this will happen this way. Like everything but the only way that you get to that point is by being bad along the way or fucking up along the way. It's really not. It's almost like you're peeling back the curtains. Or recently I started calling it like playing the game Guess Who. Like you remember that game Guess Who, where you're like asking questions and you're just flipping down until you get to that one face. It's literally that, because I think about it this way. I'm like, my goal is just to find the 100 people in the world that fuck with me. Yeah. That's it. There's what, 8 billion people in the world? Yeah. All I need is 100.
Yeah, there's probably more though, just so you know.
But that's what I'm saying. Like anything added on to that is a blessing. Yeah. But all I need is 100. So if, you know, 1 million people don't fuck with me and don't like me and whatever, talk shit, I still love you, but it's fine. You don't have to watch me. You don't have to like, you literally can block me, you know? Yeah. But it's like, I think that's the part where people get stuck into thinking that like they got to create something that everybody's going to love. And you don't.
Yeah, not everyone cares that much about furniture. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I think one of the best pieces of advice I got years ago from like a mentor when I was struggling with like a relationship with somebody, and he said to me, and he had like this real monotone voice. He's like, not everybody has to be your friend. And I was like, huh. You know, like not everyone has to be your friend. Not everyone has to like you. Like we still got to get along people and be kind for sure. But they don't need to love you.
Just respect. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Just respect and understand that if somebody's not for you, they're not for you. Doesn't mean you have to be disrespectful or be negative. Like if you don't like something, don't give your energy to it. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. And there's plenty of people out there who really like furniture. And those are the people I'm trying to talk to.
There's literally a whole demographic of people, and I only know this because of those real estate videos that I watch, that they don't like to buy anything that their friend has. Yeah. They're like, oh, Kevin has that table, and then I don't want it because I want an original piece.
Yeah, holla at your boy.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. And then like so his name is Anas. for him, when he's going through the tours and he's talking about these unique pieces, he's really given like weight to them because he understands that every single piece inside of that property is a piece of art.
Yeah.
And until you convey that value in a way that makes people understand that, everything is just storytelling.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. And I think like that, like, why does that matter? That those pieces, they're so unique. They have their own personality. Like if you can find like a uniqueness in a character and love that coffee table, then you could look at a stranger and find a uniqueness and a character in them and love that.
Yeah.
You know,
that's huge, man. So like when somebody's experiencing your work, what do you hope for them to walk away with?
Yeah. The possibilities are endless. That's the hope.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I have my style. It's not like I'm doing like the craziest thing in the world. I think it's the pieces that I make kind of border like acceptable, but they're out there enough where it's like, oh, I never even thought that that could be something that exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, oh, that could actually look good in my house. But it's not like anything I ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's that.
Or inspires something in a way that you never expected it to.
Yeah.
Your piece could literally inspire a fashion designer to create a certain piece. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately the goal for me as an artist is like, I just want people to find beauty in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like no matter where you go, no matter what moment of life you're in, no matter the setting that you live in, like Detroit, like naturally is not always the prettiest place. It's pretty flat. You don't see like mountains on the horizon.
I mean, we have gray weather all like for
like,
months at a time.
But also like I still live here and I could look around and just find like beauty quite easily. And I think it's a mindset thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ultimately like, I mean, maybe I'm not going to achieve this in furniture, but I want people to just like find the beauty in their life.
I will say this, that I think the words that we put out into the universe are so important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that anybody should ever say what they don't want.
Yeah.
I think you should say, when you do achieve this in furniture, this is what, will be.
People will look at my chairs and be blown away. Yeah.
And have a good seat.
Profound. Yeah.
Well, Jason, I appreciate your time, your talent, your creativity, man.
It was a pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Ralph.